meaning of simulacra, it's so flattened. And of course, there is nothing being challenged in it. What is the very hegemonic written history is being challenged through that artwork. And obviously, talking about a place like Muziris, which like it took by water in 14th century, we know very well that if we study history, Kerala history properly, that was also a period when the local Brahmanism like completely erased the existing Buddhist culture. There was a violent history of Kerala, which Dalit historians are very aware of. But as an excuse of all this superficiality, we evoke the cosmopolitan of culture of Kochi, which was not at all there. It's just a fabrication. So that is why I'm asking about this question. Obviously, we won't be able to any critical statement like this. While Binale was going on, there was a Dalit movie, Papile Buddha, which was banned by the state. Binale organizers, despite being the cultural avant-gardes of Kerala public sphere, they have not been able to do anything. And obviously, the Jonas Charles artwork, which was interpreted by the state representatives, and many of the flag images of band organization had to be covered by black color. So there was no any mentioning about this unfortunate side of this artwork along with this artwork. So that is my doubt that I have. Being superficial is a necessary condition of this Binale artwork.
I think you have to look at the project in general. I mean, the kind of works which is represented in the Binale, it's not just about Kochi and Musris. I mean, look at Angelika Massetti's work. It's nothing to do with, Musris. I mean, there was a concept shared with all the artists. Like, I mean, you can actually address the intimate, complex issue which you feels, which has to be said. So you look at Ahmad Matar's work and what he has addressed in the project. I think I'm very proud, I mean, sitting next to Vivan, I mean, I can say this. Whenever I used to feel stressed, walking around, doing the project, I used to walk into Vivan's room and walk on the projection, from one side to the other. Because I used to feel that I'm with ancestors. I used to tell my friends, we are a community, we worship ancestors. There is, in this project, there is a sense of ancestry, a very strong sense of ancestry, like coming very close to you. So it's up to you that where, if you think, what is minimalism all about? It's not superficiality. So it's the same way. I mean, if Vivan has come up with, a very simple way of, taking somebody in. I think, not as a curator. I mean, I think as an artist, I felt, it was very touching. So because it was like we were discussing about healing. I mean, for me, it was healing. And I used to walk in and it's, alone inside that room. I used to do that. I never felt that that work is superficial. So it's the way of expression. I mean, I think maybe
I'd like just Sheila and Vivan to say a couple of words in relationship to the kind of critical question that has been asked, which I think should be addressed. The relationship with Kochi Muziris or the site from a position of should an interrogative and critical position be a necessary constituent of addressing a site or a phenomenon like this. And I wonder if you have something to say. The kind of comment about this is only a superficial relationship with the site. The foreigners you don't expect will make it, but would not our own artists make some kind of a more critical relationship? Is that what you were saying? Would you like to say something, Vivan?
I think relationships are not just about historical facts. It's also about your engagement with people, with things around. It's not just about written history or unwritten histories. And in that sense, art speaks at other levels. And so I think one has to acknowledge that and be open to that. And I don't agree that foreigners don't respond to local things. And I think the Australian artist Dylan, I think he worked with very simple materials found, and it was a very, very sensitive work. And so I don't agree with statements like that. And nor do I think that Indian artists should be working only with Indian context or very local context, and that too in very literary terms.
If I can answer your question, see, right from the beginning, before the Biennale opened, I was already aware of the great amount of discussion, political discussion, that this excavation had generated. And since you are a very well-informed person, like so many Keralites are, that so many of these discussions enter the public domain. And the main discussion was that this site is being projected. The director is a Syrian Christian, he's a Marxist, and he is bringing in that whole history of that period and the arrival of so many, which Riaz in Kochi spoke so eloquently about. So that, the majority of visitors who come, don't come as if they know nothing at all. They come with their histories. And I was very aware of this, that once they see this, once they read the title, once they see the word Mozarist, then all those discussions, whether it is the RSS, the right wing that is attacking it, or those that are supporting it, it creates a certain circulation of discussion. And in a way, if he felt that there was a calming spirit to it, there will be also this part of the discussion which was floating around. And in fact, so many of the reviews, because it was about Mozarist, so many of the press, the local press, the Malayalam press, discussed these there. So I think that the presence of politics doesn't have to be upfront there. I don't have to, talk about the directly. And I think that the other very important part of the socialization of this, of the making of it, of the feeling of it was that the fragment, the shard, has an incredible innocence. There is a kind of childlike relationship where this construction, and I did that Bala is an artist, but the assistants he got were just normal students. And the pleasure principle in their making this, directed some of it, but by themselves, is an interest that I have, that if you propose something, you do not have to have a skill, you don't have to have the profession, but you can engage in making these forms and shapes which I, in my editorial way or in my design sense, put this all together. And I really felt whatever I would see, that people that came, children that came, that there was a very direct sensuous relationship and a delight. So with the delight as well as with the knowledge that there's a whole politics in this. I mean, there's another further internal politics of the difference between historians and archaeologists, but that's different. But it is really right-wing politics that attack the director and therefore what Mozarist is or is not.
Shita wanted to say something and we take that as the last.
It's not my intention to sort of ruin the party, but no, I won't. I'm not doing that analepsis rhetorical move because I'm not concerned with this particular Biennale, but its future, and I take the futures of Biennales in general in such moments. And I'm actually quite intrigued and fascinated by Gayatri's suggestions for itinerancy. But it comes with some specific problems that then proposes. And for me, this is laced with, and I'm saying that beginnings are always difficult. Beginnings mean that they either set the tone for the future or they provide a possibility for something else to emerge. So whatever comes after the Kochi Mozarist Biennale will have to define it itself in terms of a certain continuity as well as a certain disjunction. And both these, there are certain questions that I think all of us could address. My proposition is that no places and sites are interesting, because all places and sites are. And the reason why I'm saying this is that there tends to be site which we are now celebrating, and I have to say, Geeta, that with due respect, I'm slightly disappointed in your lowering the bar of what the questions or the standards of curatorial engagement are. Because you talked about the fact that there is a certain generosity of the site which the artist accepts, which is correct. But then this repeated over time can become poison, because then we will begin to see the site overwhelm the work in a way that we are now often accustomed to seeing in Venice, which is similar set of situations. It has these incredible vistas, it has these particularly resonant historical contexts. And every once in a while there is a good Venice Biennale, but most of the time there isn't one. And usually the problem is because there's a sort of default mode by which the site overwhelms and the site's resonances overwhelm the curatorial function, where that can be held and the propositional labor of making an exhibition work as a set of arguments is held in abeyance partly in relationship to the site. Documenta, for instance, is always a difficult exhibition to mount, and each time it fails because there can be no more boring place than Castle. There is nothing that you can do in Castle that can redeem the exhibition making process. So every documented curator in the past and every documented curator in the future will have to struggle very hard to develop, failing or not failing models. And I'm a little concerned at this division of labor that you're suggesting between the art historical, curatorial, critical imperative on the one hand, which produces the propositions, and the artist who sort of, in some ways, is allowed the license to access the generosity of the site. I'm not saying that you're doing this that simply, but it can be misread as that. And my plea to you is that, let's say that there is in the future, in the hopeful future, a biennale, an ambitious biennale in a place like Gorakhpur, which has nothing to recommend.
I was thinking Ajamgarh.
And I choose Gorakhpur with some deliberation, because there is actually a first-class film festival that happens every alternative year in Gorakhpur. And it's put together through a certain amount of curatorial intelligence. It's put together by very modest and meager means, by people who are enthusiasts and amateurs, and who call people from all over the country, all over South Asia, all over the world, who contribute their means to produce this festival. But they can't do it on the basis of it being Gorakhpur or them being, naive, simple provincial people. They have to do the labor of producing a proposition. And I always feel that my view of what your task is to actually raise the bar of the proposition. So I hope that you will continue to do that.
I've been dragged twice, and both times by the drugs. One called me, I was seduced by the dance. Should I say that I lowered the bar? And I think the unspoken word in this is that I'm succumbing to some degree of exoticism, either in a poetic statement or in the poetry of a site, and that in some senses I am using, one might almost say, and that I propose this, you have not said it quite in those words, but that I'm using two sets of standards. That in the first part of the documenta part, I raise the bar to the point of making it a declaration of the state of the world, which the curator proposes, and with which I'm sympathetic, unlike a lot of, there's criticality around that proposition, that the curator should command this kind of a position. And I think not only amongst competing critical positions, but certainly from the artists, there is a lot of tension between that kind of a curatorial command and the artist's mode of production and the desire for a degree of autonomy from discursive frameworks. So I think true that I have used two sets of standards. which is fledgling. And I would say that partisanship is as much ideological rigor as critical distance.
I just want to respond to Yashudha about, I think this, that we think of the boonies as of UP as, is it the most difficult or is it not the most difficult? Now, interestingly, we were positing this against the grand excesses of Venice. Is there curatorial failure, is a question, or is it the luxury of too much, overabundance? It's like having a Biennale, say, in Ahmedabad, Sidhpur, where every Haveli is a grand masterpiece, and whatever you interject must be subservient to architectural elegance and excess. But look at the Venice sort of formulations. Always a little further, 2005. Think with the senses, feel with the mind, 2007. Making Worlds, 2009. Illuminations, 2011. Curatorial rigor, challenge. Any of these would do very well in Gorakhpur because the urgencies of Gorakhpur are so intense. Gorakhpur as a site is highly potent. It may be evacuated of a Frederixianum, etc., but it is socially so challenging that you cannot come there with, think with the senses, feel with the mind, and not have a highly potent charge in response. That would be my response. So I think that there is no innocent site. The site will speak for itself.
Suggestion, we had Chakravarti, the chairman of the and who came to see Trinale. He was discussing about Trinale. The main suggestion, which in fact I gave, was something very much related to your suggestion. Move the Trinale every 3 years. Then that'll excite because it's a different kind of a property altogether. And if you station it every year in Delhi, that can be one reason it also died. So he was very much excited about the idea to kind of taking, because he's also getting 3 years time. I feel it's very difficult, unless and until you plan it so well to move, I'm talking about logistics, from the experience I went through. So to kind of move every 2 years, maybe in other projects which is done in every 4 years or 5 years or 3 years, you can actually literally move. I think, but I still, agree to your, points, because we have, several examples in front of us. Things get boring after a point. So I'm kind of, as an artist and as a person who believes in such projects, I know that, there can be situations like this that things might get completely bored. But I think we still have,
I really need to wind up. Do you want to say something very specific?
Yeah, very quickly. I just wanted to say that, since our most obvious partners for Biennale are either the state or corporate sponsors, right? So it's either or, if you look in the West, Europe or in America, and those are the first two obvious. And then with the Kiran Nada Museum that just opened up, which is just started by Etsia, I want to ask this question, that when both of those institutes bring their baggage, right, like we've seen that, why, and also appreciating the talk that Gayatri gave about what is coming from the north, the word Biennale, I would ask this question that first, shouldn't we first talk amongst ourselves and figure out what is kind of like a art Biennale would we want to see? As in what would be do we want to see exactly the Biennale that is happening in the West? Do we want a Venice Biennale? Or do we want a Kochi Biennale? Like she's proposing that it should be a moving Biennale, right? Who should be our partner? Should it be the state? Should it be the corporation? First we should decide the terms of what a Biennale look like in India before we figure out what are the adjustments to be made.
Years and years of doing that.
No, I'm just asking. Just
Starting
right
with
now.
the Indian Biennale to now, I don't know if you're aware of it, but this and through our attempt to propose a Delhi Biennale, we are not short of discourse on the Parliament weekend.
Sure.
Yes. So just do a rapid very quick.
Yeah, just briefly, I'll start with Riaz Komu's very moving presentation on his experience as one of the artist curators of Kochi Biennale, and he also almost presented us an anguished narrative of the travails and struggles of organizing India's first Biennale. And also he looked at Kochi as the confluence of heterogeneity and also as socio-political art movement which created a new sense of community that goes beyond the very creation of civic pride. He also mentioned that it was seen or imagined to be a space for political solidarity across nations. What was interesting, I thought, was the fact that it was spread in 14 sites, so that the very effort to look at all the sites, it forces you to actually go through the city and engage with the city and the public. Komu also sketched out the afterlife of Kochi Biennale, which I thought was interesting, that continues to live in the local memory, also in terms of artist residency programs, pedagogic programs, and also in form of digital archiving. Moving on over to Sheila Gowda's presentation. As you all know, Sheila Gowda is India's foremost conceptual artist, whose take on Kochi Biennale was quite different, because for her, the curatorial thought coincided with the selection of space and location. And of course, which I like to add, is curator's own understanding of practice, which I thought was an important part of, if you call it an intervention. And she also focused on objects that preserve the traces of its past use. And interestingly, the lack of infrastructure and certain constraints within which these artists were working, it almost compelled them to perhaps embrace some kind of an arte povera aesthetics, where the galleries itself became like studios. And interestingly, she related her experience of how the grinding stones were actually transported from Bangalore, and the way, the act of installation, through a biography of stones themselves, what they have to travel through, and the fact that their weight have very different implication for the artist and for the communist laborers who had to transport them to the venue. The materiality of 170 stones was meant to outweigh any narrative through the sheer number of their profusion, which had been arranged in a way which almost offers a phenomenological experience. Interestingly, she also engaged with spectatorial participation. She also intently observed the easy translation of these objects that were once deemed as almost sacred objects, which were almost translated into stepping stones leading up to the sea. Moving over to Vivan Sundaram's presentation, he started by expressing deep allegiance to the Kochi Biennale, not only as an artist, but as an activist, with his long-term commitment to leftist politics and, of course, site-specific installations. We are already familiar with the troupe of artists as researcher, but Vivan's artistic research took him both into history and archaeology and prepared his encounter with the ancient city of Muziris. What was originally planned as a video work took the form of sculptural installation, which had to negotiate also with Subodh Gupta's work as a neighbor in the same hall. And of course, his own video work, which we got to see, displayed in another hall, formed a parallel artwork, where the fragment, as part of thousands of these shards, acquires a high level of abstraction and materiality at the same time, as it invokes a journey into a prehistoric past. I thought both through the way in which he plays with scale as well as speed that he pointed out. Shiba Chachi speculated on the poetics of space and places in response to the concept note, I think, which was circulated by Geetha. She explored layers of affect embedded in the Kochi city and in the local memory of the people, tracing connection between the long history of the site and the multiple valences of language, where city was seen both as a transcultural mnemonic device. Locating Kochi Biennale as an Asian Biennale, she alluded to post-colonial biennales in Havana and Guangzhou, especially the latter, where she marked it as city where questions of human rights and resistance were played out through the spectacle of public protest. What role does the Biennale play in imagining a new community, where she goes beyond travel as physical displacement of bodies and alludes to movement of ideas and imaginaries? And finally, moving over to Gayatri Sinha's presentation, Kochi is presented as not as a site, but site for Kochi. She separated site from space and sharply divided biennales into northern and southern. Kochi marks as a distance both from the Eurocentric biennales and also from the state-sponsored Triennale, which is today known more for its failure than its success. So Kochi moves between the vertical and the horizontal axis, and which gives us an occasion to reimagine the regional and the local, that compels acknowledgement from the mainstream art world, both from within India and outside it. Thank you.